This is Hana, Biblical Missionaries, Lesson 5, Exiles as Missionaries. The read for this week's study, Daniel 1 through 12, and Isaiah chapter 39, 5 through 7, Daniel chapter 2, 44, Matthew chapter 24, 14, 15, Genesis chapter 41. Memory text. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Daniel chapter 7, verse 14. As a people of prophecy, Seventh-day Adventists believe in the soon coming of Jesus Christ. His coming will end this world as we know it, and ultimately will usher in God's everlasting kingdom. Depicted in the book of Daniel this way: the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven, an everlasting shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Daniel chapter 7, 27. This kingdom is the culmination of our faith. Our faith, it is what the book of Hebrews chapter 11, 16 called the better country, the one that all God's people through the ages have trusted will come. The one that all God's people through the ages have trusted will come. The one whose builder and maker is God. Verses 10. But the book of Daniel is also a kind of handbook for missionary activity. From it we can draw lessons on how the Lord was able to use some of his people to witness to those who were steeped in spiritual and theological ignorance. Through their faithfulness and diligence and unwavering faith, these believers revealed the reality of the living God to those who knew only false ones, and gave these pagans a chance at a place in this everlasting kingdom as well. Sunday, the exile, read Isaiah chapter 39, 5 through 7, and Daniel 1, 2. How are these verses related? Daniel, mosquitoes here, mosquito. Daniel, whose name means God is my judge, was forced marched from a defeated Jerusalem into the Babylonian capital. The book of Daniel gives glimpse of his life in the courts of Babylon and Persia. After 3 years of education in Babylon, Daniel was employed as a civil servant and royal advisor. Through the power of God, he rose above normal captive status to become a highly placed missionary to two superpowers. The book of Daniel is more than a treasure of prophetic literature. The reader encounters some of the challenges facing Hebrews living in an alien culture that provided no apparent support for their loyalty to the God of Israel, and at times was openly hostile. It also paints a beautiful picture of men who learn to live out their commitment to truth in the absence of the temple, the priesthood and sacrifices. Read Daniel chapter 1 verse 8 through 13, chapter 5 12, chapter 6 4, chapter 9 3 through 19. What do these texts tell us about Daniel's character that made him the great missionary he was? Every institution that bears the name of Seventh-day Adventist is to be to the world as Joseph in Egypt, as was Joseph in Egypt, and as were Daniel and his fellows in Babylon. In the providence of God, these men were taken captive that they might carry to heathen nations the knowledge of the true God. They were to be representatives of God in our world. They were to make no compromise with the idolatrous nations with which they were brought in contact, but were to stand loyal to their faith, bearing as a special honor the name of worshippers of God who created the heavens and the earth. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 8, page 153 by Ellen White. Think how easy it would have been for Daniel to have compromised, especially given his circumstances. What does his example teach us about how lame our excuses for compromise often really are? Monday, witness Daniel chapter 2 through 5. In Daniel chapter 2, Daniel had an opportunity born out of necessity to witness to the power of the true God as opposed to the false ones of Babylon. After singing a hymn of praise with his Jewish compatriots and king, thanking God for answering their prayers, Daniel chapter 2, 20 through 23, he interpreted the king's dream and testified to God's greatness and dominion over all earthly kingdoms. What does the king say that shows he learned something about the true God? See Daniel chapter 2, 47. In Daniel chapter 2, Daniel didn't have a choice. Either give the king what he wanted or face death. In contrast, in chapter 3, his three friends could have spared themselves the fiery furnace if they simply had obeyed the king's command. Instead, by their faithful witness, they were able to testify to the power of the true God. How did Nebuchadnezzar know that the form of the force was like the Son of God? He had heard of the Son of God from the Hebrew captives that were in his kingdom. They had brought the knowledge of the living God who rules all things. Ellen White, Advent Review and Sabbath Herald, May 3, 1892. In Daniel chapter 4, what confession did King Nebuchadnezzar again make regarding the true God, or thanks to the witness of Daniel. See Daniel chapter 4:37. In Daniel 5, we have Daniel's last appearance at the Babylonian court, where he is called upon to explain the extraordinary writing upon the wall of Belshazzar's palace, foretelling the overthrow of the Babylonian Empire at the hands of the Medes and Persians. Through no doubt, Belshazzar had been impressed by what Daniel did. It was too late. The king's fate was all but sealed. The sad thing is that according to the Bible, see Daniel chapter 5, 17 through 23, Belshazzar had the opportunity to learn truth and to be humbled by it. As we know, he didn't take advantage of mosquitoes. Belshazzar had opportunity to learn truth and to be humbled by it. As we know, he didn't take advantage of those opportunities. How important that we look at our own lives and ask ourselves, what kind of witness does my life represent to the world? What does your answer tell you? Tuesday, Daniel in Persia, and when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Daniel chapter 6:20. The king called Daniel the servant of the living God. What is implied in those words? In Daniel chapter 6, with the change of empire and King Daniel, Daniel still kept his position and was even promoted, becoming one of 3 presidents to whom 120 satraps were to report. King Darius even appointed him vizier, vizier, over his whole kingdom, arousing the antipathy of the other presidents and satraps. They induced the king to make an empire-wide decree that really was aimed at Daniel alone. He was thrown into a den of lions, but God dramatically intervened in a situation that even the sympathetic king could not reverse. Daniel's deliverance so pleased the king that he issued an empire-wide royal decree exalting the God of Daniel. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and he endures forever. His kingdom of Daniel, his kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. Daniel chapter 6, 25 through 27. read Daniel chapter 6, what in the chapter indicates that Daniel had already been a great witness to the king. Also, what in the king's decree indicates that he knew more about Daniel's God than he could have learned merely from the dramatic rescue. What does this tell us about Daniel's witness to him? Yeah, witnessing is really important on every individual, include me and you. Wednesday, Daniel and God's eternal kingdom. Daniel was not merely an interpreter of other men's dream. Significant as that was in this context in Daniel chapter 7 through 12, he had his own visions, which revealed the future of great world superpowers. Daniel's vision especially emphasized that despite the earthly rulers and their plans and machination or machinations, God retains final control of nations. In the end, he and his final kingdom will triumph, and that triumph will be complete. See Daniel chapter 2:44. Read Daniel chapter 7, 13, 14. Chapter 7, verse 13 and 14. What is being described in this text, and how does it relate to the idea of Christians taking the gospel to the world? Whatever else those verses are talking about, the central issue is the establishment of God's eternal kingdom, which doesn't come until after the return of Jesus. And what factor did Jesus himself say was important in regard to his return? And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Matthew chapter 24, verse 14 through 16. Jesus prophesies of the end of the world in Matthew 24, linked to Daniel's prophesies. The abomination of desolation predicted by Daniel, Daniel chapter 11, 31, 12, 11, chapter 12, 11, was further explained and applied by Jesus to his own day and beyond. The point is that Jesus closely linked the book of Daniel to the end times, which of course isn't surprising because Daniel in many places does indeed point to the end times. Daniel chapter 8, 17, chapter 19, chapter 11, chapter 8 verse 17 and 19, and chapter 11 verse 35, chapter 12 verse 4 and 13. And according to Jesus, the end doesn't come until this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world. Matthew chapter 24, 14. The gospel is to be preached unto all the world, and only then will Jesus return, and we are the ones called to preach it. Some then argue that Jesus can't return until we do our work? How are we to understand our role in the timing of Jesus' return? Bring your answer to class on Sabbath. Thursday, more exiles as missionaries. Daniel was an Israelite in involuntary banishment from Israel, as were Joseph and Moses in Egypt, Nehemiah in Babylon, and Esther in Persia. Their lives reveal that it is possible to live faithfully to God in spiritually and culturally unsupportive environments. With God's direction, it was even possible to attain prominent administrative positions in these alien settings. Each lived a creative and rich life, skillfully negotiating complex religious, social, political, and economic dynamics far different from those of their home culture. They not only were loyal members of exiled Hebrew communities, they were also in their own ways effective missionaries for the God of Israel. Witness while in exile included both passive presence and active proclamation. Esther, Daniel, like this. Yeah. Esther 1 did not identify as a Hebrew until called to reveal it. The Daniel identified as a Hebrew 2 kept her religion to herself until called to reveal it. 2 made known his religious convictions. 3 God protected her and her family. 3 God protected him and his friends. 4 witnessed in high places to save her life along with her peoples. For witnessed in high places to save his life along with other peoples. 5 helped establish religious freedom and right to self-defense of a religious minority. 5 indirectly influenced King Cyrus to allow exiled Hebrews to rebuild the Jerusalem temple. Read through Genesis 41. In what ways was Joseph able to witness to the Egyptians? How does his story parallel that of Daniel and his companions in Babylon? In what situations in which you find yourself can you witness for your faith? Are you giving a passive or active witness, or both? What are things you can either say or do that would make a more powerful impression on others about the goodness and love of our God? Yes. And further study Friday. Multitudes will be called to a wider ministry. The whole world is opening to the gospel. From every quarter of this world of ours comes the cry of sin-stricken hearts for knowledge of the God of love. It rests with us who have received the knowledge with our children, to whom we may impart it to answer their cry, to every household and every school, to every parent, teacher, and child, upon whom has shone the light of the gospel. Comes at this crisis the question put to Esther, the queen, at the momentous crisis. in the Israel's history. Who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Ellen G. White, The Adventist Home, page 484, 485. Discussion questions. 1. Discuss the prophecies in the book of Daniel, especially Daniel 2 and 7 and 8. In what ways are these such a powerful testimony not only to the prophetic reliability of the Bible, but to God's foreknowledge? For instance, notice how between Daniel chapter 2 and 7 and 8, 3 of the 4 main kingdoms are named for us. How should this help us learn to trust in the word of God and His promises to us? 2. In these accounts in the book of Daniel and some of the other stories, such as that of Joseph, there were some miracles that, of course, greatly added to the credibility of their witness to the pagans around them. At the same time, too, what aspects of their character lend even more credibility to their witness. That is, in what way can character and faithfulness, even more than signs and wonders, be a more powerful witness to others about the reality of God and what He can do in our lives? 3. As we saw in the Gift from the River, Part 1, by Don Shore, Tripura, Bangladesh. Don Shore was glad to be home watching his father's water buffalo. He had been away at school and had just completed his high school graduation exams. The day grew hotter, and Donna Shore decided to go for a swim in the nearby river while the buffalo grazed nearby. He waded into the cool water, looking for a place that was deep enough to swim. It was the dry season, and the river was much shallower than usual. Donna Shore stood in the waist-deep water and looked upstream. He saw something floating in the water. It wasn't unusual to find the debris in the river, so he wasn't sure why this object caught his eye. He waited as it bobbed closer to him. Then he reached down and picked it out of the water. It was a Bible. He had never seen a Bible before, but instinctively he knew that this was a holy book. He waded ashore and carefully laid the wet book in the sun to dry. As a few pages dried, he then turned to other wet pages and allowed the sun's hot rays to dry them. Don Shore came from a religious family. Every day they worshiped their gods, laying gifts of rice and incense on the altar in their home. Don Shore's parents had taught him to respect all things holy, and that included the book he had found in the river. The book wasn't yet dry when evening came, so Don Shore took it home. The next morning he carried it back to the field and laid it open in the sun. After 3 days, the Bible was dry enough for him to read it. Curious, he turned to the first pages and began reading. In the beginning, God created. Donesho was fascinated by the account of creation and the first man and woman. He remembered reading about the first humans in the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu holy book. An idea struck him and he began comparing the Bhagavad Gita with the Bible. One day he read the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples and contrasted that to his own prayers. I have done nothing but ask and ask, wanting something for myself or my family. Now I understand that Christians pray for others. As Donato continued reading, he discovered a God who searches out and invites people to accept his gift of salvation. This God is patient and he loves to forgive. Donato thought how his entire life had been an effort to earn the favor of the gods by giving them expensive gifts and by making long and tiring pilgrims to appease them. Yeah, it's so the interesting story inside the story. So I will read the part 2. A gift from the river. Donesho felt a fervent desire to know the truth. He decided to mark with a red pencil everything he found in the Bible and in the Bhagavad Gita that was good and helpful. So soon he realized that he was marking nearly everything in the Bible. Donesho decided that one day he would be a Christian, though he had no idea how or when that would happen. He entered college and had little time to read, but his desire to know God never left him. When he returned home after college, he met an old friend in the marketplace. I've become a Christian, his friend told him. Donesho was thrilled. He told him about finding the Bible in the river and then said, "Tell me, how can I become a Christian?" His friend's face lit up and he hugged Donesho. Then he told him that in a city about 30 miles, 45 kilometers away, there was a church where Donesho could learn how to become a Christian. Early Saturday morning, Donesho boarded a bus to the town where the church was located. He found the house church and went in. Everyone sat with their eyes closed. Donesho didn't realize that they were praying. He looked at them. They looked like normal people, he thought. When they opened their eyes, they were surprised to see Donesho standing near the door. They welcomed him and invited him to join them. Donesho attended the church as often as he could, but he couldn't go every week because the bus fare was expensive. But he felt great joy in what he was learning and began telling his friends about it. Some wanted to visit the church too, so the little group agreed to take turns going, sharing the expense of the bus fare. Then those who had gone could teach the others what they had learned. For a year, Donesho and his friends attended church this way. Then Donesho told the pastor that he wanted to be baptized. The pastor was happy to arrange the baptism, but apologized because the little church had no baptistry. We will have to baptize you in the Changi River. Ganges River. The pastor said me that's wonderful. Pastor said that's wonderful. Donation responded, the same river that brought me the Bible will seal my covenant with God. Donation had 24 others who were baptized in the river where his quest for God had begun. Among those other 24 were 7 friends who Donation had invited to learn about Christ. They are the first Christians among the Tripura people. Wow. Donation Tripura studied theology at Bangladesh Adventist Seminary and College in Bangladesh. Wow. So the kind of miracle. So we have to be a simple to accept the truth, the God, our Creator, and our Savior Christ. Yeah, thank you. To be a son of God, we have to pray for others, for like these people who just seek the truth. Thank you, my friends. See you then at the chapter at lesson 11. Bye.